Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our program tonight, presented by HJ International Graduate School for Peace and Public Leadership. It's our pleasure to welcome you this evening to this program, which falls under the category of our area of career development. And we're pleased tonight to have some very special guests with us to talk to us about CPE. Thank you also again for joining. And during the course of the program, I will be putting my contact information as Dean of Enrollment Management and Student Life into the chat box, along with pertinent links about our degree programs and the manner that you need to follow if you decide to apply to one of our degree programs or to even take one course during the coming semesters. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our host this evening, Dr. Thomas G. Walsh, our president here at HJI. I'd just like to say how lucky I feel personally to be able to assist Dr. Walsh in these kinds of programs. He's a very busy man, many things on his shoulders, but he always graciously takes the opportunity to be here for events like this, to be involved in the conversation, and also to engage our students and our potential students. Dr. Walsh is a 1979 graduate of HJI, and after completing his studies here at HJI, he went on to complete his PhD at Vanderbilt University in the School of Religion, where he specialized in the study of religion and ethics. Since his graduation, Dr. Walsh has taught at a number of colleges and universities, and of course, including here at HJI. In fact, currently he is co-teaching a course with Reverend Damian Dunkley, which is entitled Unification Studies Seminar, Ministry and Public Leadership in America. As many of you know, Dr. Walsh has worked very closely with our co-founders, Dr. Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, in the establishment of the Universal Peace Federation, whereas until recently, very recently, he served as international chair. He is also the editor. He's edited more than 20 books and publications for the Universal Peace Federation, and still serves now as executive editor of Dialogue and Alliance, which is an academic journal indexed by the American Theological Library Association. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Thomas Walsh, who will offer his words of welcome. Dr. Walsh?
Well, thank you very much, Dean Boyd, for that kind and generous introduction. It's always a pleasure to work with you on these important programs sponsored by HJI as really a critical piece of our educational mission, and to bring in such distinguished speakers as we have this evening. I want to say I like your tie. I was a little bit distracted as you spoke because I was admiring your tie there. So
thank you. This is my student tie from all over countries from around the world.
All right. Well, it's very appropriate. We're excited at many things that are going on at HJI. We'll be graduating our 48th graduating class in about 4 weeks on May 25th. We're greatly proud of our students, two of which we'll hear from later in the program. And I'm excited, honestly, to learn more about CPE, because in my capacity as president, I've not been able to dig as deeply into this important area, particularly as it relates to our DMIN program, which is a flagship program of our institution. I'm working because as president, I also love to teach, and we'll kind of conclude with this, that I'm preparing a course for the fall that addresses particularly how Christianity interfaces with the other world religions at this time in history. And that touches on a field known as theology of religions. In other words, how we think theologically about another religion, almost like, what does my religion how does it guide me or even require me doctrinally to think about people of another faith? So I think I'm going to be kind of also listening as I hear from Dr. Richardson and Ms. Robertson and Prabhu, how that meshes with being in a pastoral role, particularly to those of other faiths. But that's enough for me. It's my pleasure to introduce a dear friend and longtime. We've known each other. In my previous mission, I worked frequently in Africa, and Dr. Drissikone comes from Ivory Coast. He studied there at Bonny University, the university in Abidjan. He studied teaching and taught in Ivory Coast, came to America, did an MA at Norwich University in diplomacy, and he did the MDiv at HJI and the DMin, and is now the director of our DMin program, doing stellar work. And he's associate professor of conflict resolution and ministry, teaches courses in our Peace Studies MA program on ministry and peace studies. And he has expertise in areas such as transformational leadership and managing cross-cultural conflict among communities. I know he has two wonderful children, and he and his wife live in Tarrytown, where we've been invaded by all kinds of security today with the presence of President Biden, and a lot of our roads shut down and that for safety and security. But Dr. Coney,
thank you. Thank
you have
you.
the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walsh, Mr. President. I'm delighted to, that you're supporting this program, and it's great to have you here. And thank you for this kind introduction. It makes me feel as I'm such a great person. Anyway, before I introduce the main speaker for tonight, let me say a few words about CPE at HJI. So CPE is a requirement to complete an MDiv, Master of Divinity as HJI. We recommend that students apply for CPE after a minimum of 1 year of theological education. So CPE is also a major component for each student in the integration colloquium, which is a one credit course they take later, because they have to reflect on their journey at HJI, but also the CPE experience. And as the field educator director at HJI, I can work with you if you're interested. Even if you are not a MDiv student, you are interested in a placement for CPE, we can work together and find a place for you. Additionally, 1 unit of CPE is highly recommended for applicant in the doctoral ministry program. Some students enter the program, we call it a pathway program. Some students enter that program without a MDiv, and sometimes with no strong ministry background. So we, in addition to the leveling courses, we recommend them to take a 1 unit of CPE. So there is no better person to talk about the role of CPE in effective ministry and chaplaincy than Reverend Dr. Richardson. So he's a dear friend of mine. We definitely work together in certain capacity, because I also serve as a board member for CPE at Westchester Medical Center. He's the senior director of clinical pastoral education and spiritual health at Westchester Medical Center. He's an ordained and consecrated archbishop in both the Pentecostal and Ethiopian Orthodox Church. He served as a senior pastor for 20 years before becoming a CPE educator. Prior to coming to Westchester Medical Center, Bernard served as a regional director of spiritual care at Northern Light, Eastern Maine Medical Center, Bangor. He also served as a CPE educator and admission coordinator for the Johns Hopkins Academic Medicine System sponsored CPE program. He was also the senior chaplain for the Johns Hopkins Bellevue Medical Center. He holds a bachelor's degree in philosophy and psychology from State University of New York, and a doctoral and master's degree from Christ Theological Seminary in Sacred Theology. So there is so much to say about him. I will refer you to the to the chat box to see the full bio. And you know, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you, my dear friend and brother, Reverend Dr. Richardson at HAI. You have the floor. Mm-hmm.
Evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Drissa, for the opportunity and the invitation to come and give my 2 cents about CPE. Certainly want to acknowledge and give deference to all the powers that be, that I may not necessarily know you all by name, but once again, I am appreciative of being in this space to talk a little bit about CPE for a few minutes. CPE, as some of you may or may not know, it stands for Clinical Pastoral Education, and it's the sanctioned paradigm of education, which is the cornerstone of the Association of Clinical Pastoral Education, ACPE, which is our accrediting body. As of right now, as I understand it, it is the only Department of Education recognized programming for pastoral education. So we hold the cornerstone of that as the gold standard of education for preparing people, those that come our way and traverse our doors, to learn about not only ministry, because most of our learners come through the door already oriented in ministry, but how does that understanding live out in their lived experience? So CPE is fundamentally about the integration of all parts of oneself and how that shows up, whether it's in the clinical environment, doing chaplaincy, whether it's in congregational ministry or whatever capacity one chooses to apply. It informs how we show up. And in some aspects, from a personal perspective, it's transformative learning. Someone like myself who didn't know anything about clinical pastoral education and becoming a chaplain, I was already a bishop in my faith orientation. I was already pastoring at that time, 20 years, and heard about CPE. And an educator, I was invited as a community pastor, I was invited to a forum to learn about bringing clergy into the hospital to learn how to navigate the clinical environment. And they had someone, a CPE educator, present to us. And the CPE educator made one statement that I like to say at this point changed my life. She said, as local pastors, when you come to the hospital to visit your parishioners, you make the visit about your faith and not about the faith of the patient. And of course, in my own paradigm and in my own mind, I'm like, what is this woman talking about? What? I got to learn some more. I got to find out what is she talking about? And I bit the bullet, and I entered into a summer unit of CPE, and from then the rest is history. But it was transformational for me because it allowed me opportunity to be in ministry in connection with people, human to human, person to person, in the most vulnerable moments, in the most vulnerable times of their lives. Now, everyone that takes a unit of CPE or takes units of CPE may not necessarily work at the hospital bedsides of patients. But what it taught me most of all, and what our hope is as educators of CPE, is that we're creating better listeners, that we are motivating and providing opportunity and inviting individuals to listen better, to listen to the story, capture the story. The founder of what we like to say, the founder of CPE, Anton Boysen, coined as the living human document. And that's what we purport to do as educators. That's what we hope for our students that engage in this type of learning, experiential learning, that it is some ways transformational for them, that makes them better ministers, makes them better priests, makes them better educators, theologians, fathers, mothers, wherever it applies, that it makes one better in dealing person to person. This is an exciting time for ACPE and the CPE world, depending on who you ask, because there are a lot of changes happening in our formation. As of January 1 of this year, our standards and our outcomes have changed. They changed in a way that kind of augmented a little bit, where the evaluation process was a little bit more subjective. Now they have readjusted to have more teeth in the game. So our students, as they go through units of CPE moving forward, are actually being graded on development of skills. This is a new paradigm for us, because naturally historically we just kind of evaluated on how things were naturally and organically occurring. But this kind of gives us a little bit more of a fixed point of being able to work with students and developing the skills that we would like to see them have as they graduate or matriculate through our process. So I want to take a few minutes to just kind of show you a few of those changes, and I'll move out of your way. I'm just going to share my screen. So previously, CPE was categorized by level 1 and level 2, and generally someone who was moving through CPE, especially if they were moving towards board certification, most certifying bodies require a minimum of 4 units of CPE in order to be eligible from that perspective for certification. And as of the changes of this year, they're now going to be evaluated and graded on 4 different levels of CPE. And it's called level 1A, level 1B, level 2A, and level 2B. Each one of those different levels has its own expectation of skills that a student is supposed to achieve and acquire. But they're built off of the same standards that have been the hallmark of CPE throughout its history. And someone please just give me an indicator when I'm at my time. Thank you so much. So it is categorized in 5 areas. The first one is spiritual formation and integration. And in this area, we're evaluating students, whether it's level 1A, 2A, 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, we're looking at their development, at their ability to articulate and demonstrate how their spiritual orientation shows up in their lives. How can they talk about it? What are the, as a Christian, for an example, what are the scriptures that speak to your formation, that motivates you for ministry? Is there a scripture? Is there a Bible story? Is there some other philosophical orientation or anything that speaks to your sense of call, to your sense of purpose and meaning? So we work with students to continue to talk about how their spirituality develops, as well as their religious formation, their religious journey, and their family of origin, all of those things. We try to work from the idea of one being able to be self-aware. How self-aware are you? So spiritual formation and integration, looking at all the different parts of ourselves and how they show up and how we function in ministry. Category B further builds on that awareness of self and of others. And this area takes more of a look at our implicit and explicit biases, what we are aware of about ourselves, our perspectives, how they show up and how we function in ministry. Can we talk about our likes and dislikes? Can we step into those areas that make us uncomfortable and still engage and be in relationship with the other? So our sense of awareness and our awarenesses of others, and also what's very important in our paradigm is self-care. How do you care for yourself? So we look at that as well.
You still have 5 minutes, so yeah.
Okay, so I can slow down a little bit.
Okay.
So category C is relational dynamics. Our ability, or one's ability to interrelate, especially with the establishing of goals for themselves, engaging in exercising that empathetic muscle, and one sense of awareness of boundaries, relational boundaries. This is always interesting for me when we have engagement around boundaries, because a lot of the students that come our way are from ministry, and one myself, having been through ministry, there was a time in my life in ministry I had poor boundaries. And how does that show up? How does that show up for our students? And what boundaries need to be established? Another area is group dynamics. We explore group dynamics. Whether it's Bruce Tuckman's thought about forming, norming, storming, and performing, or some other theorists, we engage in those family systems, internal family systems. We look at all of these different dynamics. We teach them a little bit of theory so that they can have ways of looking at how they work with others in larger groups in different environments. Spiritual care interventions. In this area, we look at the development of one's ability to assess distress, to acquire and develop proficiency in their active listening skills, their ability to intervene, right? If you see something and you identify something, the question next is, what did you do about it? And so we work with our students to develop that to be an integral part of the interdisciplinary team, that as you are a part of the team, you have a different perspective and a different lens that no one else on the team has. And how do you articulate that and share that in a professional manner to be a part of the plan of care?
The standards that you
for the plan of care of the patient, and then also how to document that. So our students acquire this knowledge and have that practice as well in the clinical environment. And lastly, category E is professional development, utilizing, engaging in ethical practices, dealing with different types of crises situations, and dealing with it from the ethical perspective, engaging in consultation and feedback, resourcing where your self-knowledge or your education stops. How do you connect with resources outside of yourself? In this environment, again, using myself as an example, as a Christian, I'm limited in what I can do with someone of the Islamic faith. So how do we engage with others and team with others to, again, provide quality spiritual care and dignity to the people that we're caring for? At the advanced level, there is a research component where there's opportunities for students to engage in research and become a part of the body of knowledge that's developing in spiritual care, or engaging in their own curiosities and experiences. They're able to engage in that work. And there's a lot of things happening, exciting things happening in the spiritual care world in that regard. Ultimately, the levels of achievement for all of these different levels, as one enters in, whether it's level 1, level 1B, level 2A, 2B, they will acquire these designations as a part of their moving forward. Someone who completes level 1A receives a certificate in Introduction to Spiritual Care. Someone that completes level 2A receives a certificate in Intermediate Spiritual Care, and so forth and so on. And so it's an exciting time. It's a time of change in the CPE world, and there's mixed feelings about it, but overall there's excitement. So thank you for the opportunity to share in this space. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Well, great. So I'm gonna maybe allow Dr. Walsh to say something first. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Richardson. That's a fantastic overview, and really very comprehensively and very clearly outlined how also you're shifting into a new period of core standards and kind of rubrics for this CP program. I mean, we have the counterpart generally with our institution in terms of our accreditation with Middle States Commission on Higher Education, and it reminded me of that. But this really shows a very tightly, carefully managed program that covers all the bases. I'm quite impressed, frankly. Maybe I'll start out with a question related to what you said that really struck you, and I guess it struck me too. I tried to think how you took it and how you came to kind of unravel that phrase from a Yoda-like person who told you it's when your account of the patient, you speak about your faith and not the patient's. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? How you've come to interpret that?
Absolutely. Well, at first, my knee-jerk reaction again was, what in the world are you talking about? Of course, it's about my faith. And to actually be curious enough to take a unit of CPE to engage that curiosity and to learn that genuine relationship, and in this context, is about being with the patient, or we can make it even larger, being with the person and meeting the person where they are. I'm already oriented in the world how I am, but if I want to connect with someone else, I have to also accept what's in front of me as well. And it's just been a journey since to learn that I don't have to hide behind facades. I don't have to hide behind titles or any of those things that I had achieved in order to connect with somebody.
Yeah. And if I can just follow up, I believe in your introduction, is it correct that you're an Orthodox Christian? Yeah. Okay.
Archbishop,
Ethiopian Orthodox.
Ethiopian Orthodox and Pentecostal.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another fascinating trait of our time. Kind of, we have hybrid spiritualities, or we've come to learn from more than one tradition and find God or deep spirituality through that exposure to. Now, I guess what I'm wondering is, have you had encounters with people who are Hindu, Buddhist, Jewish, Muslim, and do you approach that differently than you would to a fellow Christian?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, it's developmental, right? And progressive, where you begin to learn how to first engage and introduce yourself to persons, especially in this environment, just by being Bernard.
Yeah.
Great story for you. My first unit of CPE, I had a beautiful nun who was my educator, and I loved her dearly. She passed away a few years ago, and she was a hard cookie. And so, again, when I joined CPE, I was already a bishop, and I was already these things. And so we got our name badges, and on my badge said Bishop Bernard Richardson. And we went into her office to have our education day, and she saw my badge. She said, "Go back to security," just like this with her finger and everything. Her little finger was like, "Go back to security and take that bishop off of that badge." I was offended. I was mad. I was every variation of anger. And so I went and I did it. And I came back and we had our education day, and we had our one-on-one session later on that day. And I walked in there steaming mad, smoke coming out my ears and everything. Went and sat down, thrust myself in her chair. She was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "You made me take bishop off of my badge, and I don't understand why. I'm a bishop. I earned this." She was like, "I did." And the reason why, she said, "You want to know why I did it?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "The reason why I had you do it is because I want you to learn how to be Bernard, that's a bishop, and not just be Bishop Bernard."
Nice.
Changed my life.
Yeah,
Changed
very
my
nice.
life. Changed my life.
Can I ask a follow-up just on the idea, another thing that jumped out at me, that there in this kind of moving into CPE more deeply, there's an integration of all parts of oneself. Could you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. I use the paradigm in my pedagogy. I use the paradigm of Walter Brueggemann.
Hmm.
his spirituality of the Psalms. And he talks about orientation, disorientation, and I like to say new orientation. And I start out with the fact that my students, when they come to me, are already oriented in the world a certain kind of way.
Yes.
They're already professionals, parents, married, unmarried, whatever the case might be, right? So in order to integrate something, we have to first disintegrate it.
Hmm.
And so we look at those different parts and we talk about all these different parts of what makes you who you are. And then we look at how these things show up in your functioning of ministry. How does your role as a parent show up in your care for others? How does your ministry? How does being an only child or coming from a larger family? All these different contexts make a person who they are, and what your awareness is about yourself and how it's informed you, it shows up. So we take it apart and then we put it back together to say, you're not just Bishop Bernard, you're Bernard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And everything that comes with that.
That's nice. And just Dr. Coney, just bear with me a minute, then I'd like you to jump
Yeah,
in.
of course. This is fascinating anyway. I'm happy listening to, yeah.
Certain points that you underscored. One was about self-care, another about, developing awarenesses of our biases. And what I really liked as well was the intercultural, interreligious humility. I guess that is really a key in your field, or in this field in general. And then following on that, you mentioned relational dynamics. I've been teaching a course where we used a book entitled The Great De-Churching, which is about a very significant decrease in church attendance that has taken place over the last 25 years, pretty much across the board of mainstream Protestant, Catholic, and evangelical Christianity, to a lesser extent Pentecostalism, which has kind of remained steadier and stronger. But and one of the kind of lessons, at least, that these authors put forward is the kind of relational nature of successful ministries. And almost like, these aren't the exact words, but kind of to some extent understanding that while doctrinal Christianity is important, relational dynamics and relational Christianity, because why do people come to church, stay in church? It's their friend, it's their spouse, it's a pastor that they enjoy and like to be with, and a community. And of course, doctrine is always very central, but this relational factor. So that is another piece of what you said that jumped out at me about the importance of this. I think even, pastors, although you're including pastoral care, but often I think of, the work in hospice or at hospitals. But these are lessons that are critical to anyone in the ministry. And life is about relationships, and successfully navigating the complexity and the minefield of human relationships is just such a needed skill. So I really liked how you put these pieces together.
No, very well.
Thank
Well,
you,
let's
Dr.
let Dr. Coney come in here.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Walsh. It was great to hear all these questions and and how Bernard really addressed them. I only have one question: is if sometime some of our students will say, "Oh, you know, um, dying patient care, ministering to dying patient."
Mm.
This is something I'm afraid of, or something that I feel like I can't do. And of course, there's a lot to unpack there. What will you say to someone who want to get into CPE but still have those challenges that is probably blocking him to make the step forward?
Thank you for the question.
Mhm.
I had a student that said, yeah, dealing with death and dying is scary.
Mhm.
Now I would join them. I was like, yeah, it is. Now what? Right, right. There's an andragogic aspect of this that students are self-learning,
Mhm.
and they know what. So what do you want to learn? Where do you want to go with that awareness?
Mhm.
And in the guidance and safety that you're not doing it alone,
Mhm.
right? Um, you know, I fall back on my own orientation again. Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley
Mhm.
of the shadow of death, I will feel no evil, for thou art with me. And Martin Buber talks about the I thou relation, that I thou. And that's one of the things, one of my theories. So
Mhm.
I bring that into the relationship, that if there's an area that you want to explore and that you're curious about, you
Mhm.
won't do it by yourself.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
this is great. I do know there is you have a supervisory aspect into the student journey. Can you say something about that as well?
absolutely. Part of this is supervised ministry, where students have the opportunity to reflect on their experiences as they're happening in real time. They also get to journal about their experiences in different modalities, such as the verbatim, which is the hallmark of the work that we do, where students go and do a visit, they go and they write it up, and they come and they present it to the group or to the class and solicit the feedback of their peers on the work that they've done. Um, CPE calls what we do the clinical method, the action, reflection, new action. So all of those different things, the supervisory relationship and the work that our students do, um, are done in a reflective container so that we can go back and look at what you've done and look at how we can empower you to possibly make different choices if necessary, or celebrate the choice that you made.
Mhm.
Well, Dr. Richardson, Dr. Coney, let's bring in Barbara Robertson and Prabhu Fano, two of our doctor of ministry students. I guess I'd like to begin by just giving Barbara and Prabhu take a minute to say a little bit about yourself, and then I'll come back around to the two of you and offer any comment or question to Dr. Richardson. So Barbara, why don't you start off?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Barbara Robertson. I am a chaplain at Vassar Brothers Medical Center for the last 15 years. And I'm a mother of 6, and I am the local pastor here in the Mid-Hudson Valley. I just really enjoyed listening to you, Dr. Richardson. I feel I could resonate so much with what you were saying. I feel like, every human being should take a unit of CPE. But
Yes.
absolutely, because the whole notion of self-reflection, the whole notion of just finding out who you are and where you're at, and being self-aware and being able to if I can't stand with my own anger, or I can't sit with my own grief, then I'm not going to be able to sit with yours. So especially if you're in ministry, you never overcame your issues with your mother, then how can you listen to your congregant who has issues with their mother? So it's just such a deep, incredibly amazing experience. I have this job where I would work for free and I get paid. It's just, I get so much out of this ministry of, being with people in their most vulnerable time. It's just a sacred task. And you get to give the gift of letting a person be heard. And when a person is heard, there's such a transformative healing power when a person truly feels heard. And I remember the first unit of CPE, a lady started crying. I said, "Why are you crying?" She goes, "I can tell you're really listening to me." And I thought, wow, if what would the world be like if it was full of people who were good listeners? That's
Thank you, Barbara. Let me go to Prabhu.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Prabhu. I'm from India. I'm married and I have one son. I'm pastoring a church last 14 years. And I'm an MDiv student at HCI, and I'm so privileged and honored to be here. And first of all, I want to really thank God and thank for the HCI for taking this initiative decision for every MDiv student should go and learn a CPE program, which I had no idea. I never heard about CPE, and I don't see in my MDiv syllabus or curriculum that every master's degree student will be going to CPE, and I have no idea. And when I came to know that last semester that you have to go for one internship for the CPE program, I had no idea where to go. And I want to thank Dr. Darrison Kone for navigating and giving a good direction. And I was so thankful to God and thankful for the HI, and they made this decision. And I went to Chester Medical Center. I was there 6 months, learned beautiful things. And as Barbara mentioned that every human being to go, and I would say every minister who want to serve people, whoever wants to do ministry, first I would tell them don't go to Bible college but go to CPE program because that's where they make you who you are. Exactly, Reverend Bernard said that it's not about what designation position that you hold on, but who you are is so important. I'm being in this ministry 19 years, traveled around 8 other countries. I never had this kind of an experience, a great listener, learning something, and I'm so thankful, and I'm so thankful. Some of the key points that I've written that I want to share, that what I've really learned this 6 months, and I had very self-reflection issues that I never knew that what is that really meaning of feelings? What is that person to understand? We are good preachers, I preach people, but we are not good listeners exactly what to be listened means. And also interpersonal skills and group discussions when people tell you what. And when I was going through the CPE, the group discussion, they put you together and poke every corner. I tell you, I wanted to beat that person. I wanted to just give him back, and I was waiting for the time. But that made me to process my, to understand who I am. I was cooking in that thing, and I know for sure. And this, I'm trying to be a better listener and become a better person. And I thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Prabhu. I'm going to ask Dean Boyd to jump in here because I think he can also bring some questions from our chat viewers, and we'll just keep the conversation going and give time to we've got about another 13 minutes that'll include some Q&A and then some final comments from Dr. Richardson before we close out with Dean Boyd. But Dean Boyd, if you have a few from the chat column.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Walsh. A couple of maybe big picture questions. Partially, Dr. Richardson, you answered them in the chat to some degree, but I think the group might benefit from maybe a more ample view of this. So first question for Barbara herself while you were speaking. You talked about 4 levels and 4 certificates being awarded. So I'm going to combine 2 questions here. The first one from Barbara is, are these equivalent to the 4 units of CPE that Dr. Kone, I know, referred to? And then Wayne Hankins is asking, again, a general question, but I think it's helpful to, particularly for those of us who are new to the whole area of chaplaincy and CPE, what is this? He says, for those going into the world of pastoring, leading, taking care of their followers, is CPE part of any theological seminary's training? So, Dr. Richardson, you want to respond first, and then maybe Dr. Kone, if you'd like to also chime in.
From my understanding, and I appreciate the questions, from my understanding, as far as CPE being available at seminaries, you really would have to check with the seminary. There's been a lot of changes happening. And I think ACPE as an organization is trying to wrap their heads around what's going on and their finger on the pulse of change. So my suggestion would be, if there's a seminary that you're interested in, to look at that program and find out if that's something that is required. To the other point about the units of CPE, yes, those units are the equivalent. It would depend on what you're taking CPE for. If you're going towards board certification, depending on your certifying body, you might want to look into what their requirements are. I know the Association for Professional Chaplaincy will take any 4 units of CPE. There are some organizations that may narrow that down, that might say you need to have at least 2 of those units, 2 of the 4 units be at level 2, or now 2A, 2A, 2B, something like that. So, it's going to take some investigation to what the actual requirements are. Again, this change is new, so this dust hasn't really settled on a lot of things. But again, the short answer is yes, they are the equivalent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Kone, like to say something in reply?
Not really. I just want maybe you can address the question of Margaret. I think it's a good question.
Yes, Margaret Sisterson, thank you for joining us, Margaret. I know I don't know what time it is there, but thank you for joining us. Can you give an example of knowing boundaries, family dynamics coming into the program? This is for you, Dr. Richardson. Can you give an example of knowing boundaries, family dynamics?
Yeah. I think I have an idea of what's being asked. So for instance, in this situation, like one of my students, learning boundaries, was very engaged with the patient and their family. And my paradigm as a director is our work starts and ends with admissions. So when a person comes into the hospital, up until they leave, regardless of how they leave. But some of our students sometimes develop some attachments with families of the good work that they've done, that they inquire about caring for them outside of the hospital context. And so they have to begin to develop and explore what their boundaries are. When you're here in this environment, when you're here as a student, when you're here as a professional of this environment, what are the boundaries in operating under that framework outside of you taking the relationship outside of now this environment and now continuing? So I look at it as something to be explorative of. It also spills into, family dynamics, getting connected and attached to members of the family or things of that nature. So really being aware. And here's the other part that I've learned in my own journey, also being consultative about it. It's not a secret. right? So that can spill out and be into something, grow into something worse in ministry when you start keeping secrets about your care. So, how do you consult? How do you let someone know what you're doing? Get that consultation, get that feedback, and then make a decision and operate from that framework. I hope I answered that question because it was a little, I hope I answered it for you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Richardson. I'd like to ask a bigger question, and I'd like to direct this to Barbara and maybe Prabhu. Barbara, you're a chaplain. You've been a chaplain for many years. And I ask this question particularly as I know that there are some people on the call tonight who are interested in becoming chaplains. And so we didn't directly talk about this, but what is a chaplain? And what led you to become a chaplain? And what are the benefits of being a chaplain? And how do I start? And I guess how does CPE play into that? And what role does that play? If you could answer that in like 3 minutes, that'd be great.
That's like one question there. Yes. Well, I would like to resonate with something Dr. Richardson said. A chaplain is a minister without an agenda. I often say, I'm there to just meet the patient where they're at. And if that is a religious space, I will meet them there as much as I can do that with my own religious integrity, and really to be that. Sometimes it's a listening presence, sometimes it's a prayer, sometimes it's silence, sometimes you are just the person standing in the room holding the box of tissues, and that is chaplaincy. So chaplaincy, it's just this amazing experience to hold space for people in vulnerable times. And you become a chaplain by starting with CPE. So, and then, most hospitals recommend at least 2 units of CPE before they'll hire you. I kind of got in the ground level at Vassar, so I was hired after 1 unit. Did you ask more questions that I didn't answer? How do people start? What is
I asked a lot of questions. Try to get the conversation going in a more general, and that was very helpful. I'd also like to direct a similar question to Dr. Kone and Dr. Walsh. This would be the last question, I think. For those of you who don't know, I'm in the Doctor of Ministry program. Dr. Kone is my academic advisor, and in taking a course with him, he made a comment at one point that he recommends that everyone in the DMin program take at least 1 unit of CPE, irrespective of whether you're planning to go further with it or not. So, Dr. Kone, we have some of our DMin students on the call and others who are aspiring. Why did you say that, and what can a DMin student expect to gain from the CPE experience to enrich in his course studies?
Okay, try to answer that in a very simple way. I mean, if you normally you don't get in the DMin program if you don't have a MDiv. And an MDiv, the requirement to get an MDiv, you're going to have 1 unit of CPE. But because of, many other factors, we have students who will get into the DMin program without necessarily getting an MDiv, which is fine. They will learn a lot of things, but they're still missing that aspect of doing CPE. So that's the rationale behind my suggestions, my recommendation. Because getting a DMin and not having 1 unit of CPE, I still feel like there's a lot missing in your journey as a doctoral student and as a DMin holder. I highly recommend it, and I will keep encouraging students to do it because of everything that we talk about today, coming from Bernard and Barbara. And, I remember, Prabhu was sharing, he was like, what in the world do I even have to do this? But at the end of the program, he was like, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah.
Well, I think that sums it up, Dr. Coney. Thank you very much. Dr. Walsh, I turn it back to you.
Well, yeah, all I have to say is this: I really learned a lot and have been fascinated by this, and I'm very grateful to Dr. Richardson and Ms. Robertson and Prabhu and Dr. Kone. Great program, and thank you to our audience. And I'd just like to invite Dr. Richardson to say whatever final words he would like to offer to our audience.
Thank you again, Dr. Walsh and Dr. Kone, for this opportunity to share. Just two things. One thing I forgot to share with you is that under the new paradigm of CPE, each one of those units is graded. So anyone who has taken CPE in the past, it's a big change because a grading element was not a part of it. But like I said, it's an exciting time and it's a different time to engage on this experiential learning. It's fundamentally ministry at the ground level, just meeting people where they are, person to person and human to human. And so wherever you are in your journey, whatever the process of your decision making or whatever the case might be, we extend the invitation for you to come to Westchester Medical Center and be a part of what we have to offer as we all engage upon this work. And I pray and wish you all good journey in your travels. And thank you once again.
Oh, God bless you, Dr. Richardson. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Dean Boyd, I'm going to give it back to you to close this out.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Walsh, and thank you to everyone for coming tonight, our speakers, our students, and those of you who are thinking about studying at HJI. I just put my email address into the chat box. I would welcome your comments about the program tonight or any questions you have about studying at HJI. Be happy to facilitate further information from our website about our Master of Divinity program or our Doctor of Ministry program, where the concept of CPE directly applies. But it's been a pleasure having you with us tonight. We hope to do more programs like this. Thank you very much, Dr. Kone, for your initiative to bring this out in this medium. I think we brought people in that normally wouldn't be able to hear these good ideas and receive this inspiration. So thank you all for coming. Please be on the lookout for our next events in your email box. I just want to mention our upcoming Research Day, which is on May 14th. It's on our website. Any of you on this call, if you're a student, staff member, faculty member, or alumni, are welcome to present a research poster. And you still have a few days left till May 5th to get your poster in. The program will be held on the 14th. And all of you will be invited to take part in the sharing about the research that's being done here at HJI. So thank you so much. God bless everybody.